So, I hear you've got some chips to use in FPL. Well, don't worry, by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to do with them. Welcome to FPL Mate, my name is Dan. Of course, this season we are getting 2 of every chip. You need to use your wildcard free hit, bench boost, and triple captain before basically before the game week 19 deadline. After that, from game week 20 onwards, you're going to get a whole new set of 4 chips. So, what are you going to do with the first chips at each stage throughout this first half of the season? Well, today, we're going to help you out right there. If you don't use them, you'll lose them. So, make sure you stay tuned, guys. So, we're going to go through various different things today. We're going to look at all of the different chips. When are the best times to use the wild card? Then we're going to look at the best times to use the free hit, bench boost, and triple captain. And finally, we're going to do a little summary, and I'm going to share with you my personal chip strategy. But it could be different depending on what your team looks like, what kind of way you like to play FPL. You might want to do something slightly different. So we're going to cover all bases here and give you the best suggestions for each chip and when to use them. So let's start off with the wild card. If you haven't used it yet, and by the way, guys, if you have used certain chips, feel free to skip forward to next parts of the video for the chips that you are interested in looking at. We're going to look at the wild card first of all. And when is the best time to use it? Well, you can either use it tactically or you can use it in a case of emergency. And if you're going to use it tactically, we're looking for those fixture swings first of all. When do fixtures suddenly become from very bad to very good for certain teams and vice versa? When do we want to make this quick switch between a whole bunch of players who maybe have been really good and another bunch of players who we want to change to for some good fixtures there? We're also going to use our wildcard to purposefully ignore certain teams, knowing you can get their players later. So, for example, if you don't have Haaland in your team right now, but you know he's got some good fixtures coming up in the future, maybe you can kind of rest easy right now with no Haaland, no Aït-Nouri, no Reinders in your team, knowing that later you can use your wildcard to get all of them. And also you can use your wildcard as part of a larger chip strategy, which we will be talking about a little bit as well. The other way is to use your wildcard in the case of an emergency. So if you have a lot of injuries, a lot of suspensions, you know, maybe players injured for long periods of time, and maybe that's combined with when you are seriously unhappy with your team. And I really do mean seriously, like if you've got some players who are just nowhere near as good as you hope they would be, and you don't really see anything looking up for them, then maybe if you have a bit of this, bit of that, then you can certainly wildcard to try and just fix your team, basically. But we can't really talk about the emergency wildcarding in a video like this. But what we can do is work out how it forms part of a strategy and how you can use it tactically. So assuming your team is fine, you don't have any injuries or suspensions, and you want to use your wildcard tactically, well, this is a good opportunity to go for it. First of all, my first suggestion is going to be game week 7. Now, I'm not super keen on this one. I do think there are better opportunities to wildcard, but I've seen a few people talking about wildcarding here. Now, the good swings in game week 7 are Arsenal and Man City. Their fixtures look really good from game week 7. And the bad swings are maybe Nottingham Forest and maybe Liverpool. I mean, to be fair, in game week 7, the swings are quite minor. So I think actually most people will be wildcarding in game week 7. Those who do will be doing so to get Arsenal players, to get Man City players. But I actually think you could possibly do that using transfers alone. And actually, for Man City, game week 6 is actually when their good fixtures start. So you could, instead of wildcarding in game week 7, actually use transfers to bring in Man City players game week 6, maybe bring in Arsenal players from game week 7. So that's something that I would probably prefer to do than wildcarding in game week 7, but it is an option. The next suggestion is to wildcard in game week 8. And I actually think this looks a little bit better because not only do we have the Arsenal fixture swing to take advantage of, we can pick up some more Man City players, but actually there's a few other teams here who have good fixtures from this period and some other teams that have some bad fixtures from this time as well. So in addition to Arsenal and Man City, we also see Chelsea and Liverpool look a little bit better from game week 8. In game week 7, Chelsea and Liverpool face each other, so it's difficult to include Chelsea and Liverpool players in a game week 7 wildcard. But for game week 8, you can load up on these teams with much more confidence. In terms of those bad swings, Aston Villa's fixtures look really poor from this period onwards. They play Spurs, Man City and Liverpool in game week 8 through 10. So a good idea to drop Aston Villa players in game week 8. And we've got Nottingham Nottingham Forest, as we mentioned already, and Spurs here as well. Their fixtures are pretty rubbish from Game Week 8 as well. So really, guys, if you think you can survive Game Week 7, depending on how your team is set up, maybe you've got a lot of Aston Villa, Nottingham Forest, Spurs players in your team, maybe you don't have Chelsea, Liverpool, Man City, Arsenal players in your team, then actually Game Week 8, I think, is a slightly better time to wildcard. And also think this works quite well as a chip combo with a free hit in Game Week 11, because if you wildcard in Game Week 8 and then free hit in Game Week 11, you basically get to ignore the worst fixture that both Liverpool and Man City have, which is against each other. So that's definitely going to be a huge opportunity. Wildcarding in Game Week 8, free hitting in Game Week 11, avoiding Liverpool versus Man City, because hopefully with a Game Week 8 wildcard, you will be loaded up on Liverpool and Man City. That could work really well. And also a wildcard in Game Week 8 kind of frees you up to bench boost a little bit earlier. Game Week 5 bench boost might work quite nicely if you are saving your wildcard all the way through until Game Week 8. But this is the wildcard week that everyone is talking about, and for very good reason as well, because we see the most severe, significant swings in Game Week 13. So we see Liverpool, Man City, and Newcastle. They have, well, particularly Liverpool and Man City, they've just played against each other, and now they have really good fixtures going forward from kind of this period onwards. So therefore, it could be a really, really nice time to wildcard them in. Liverpool have faced Nottingham Forest and Newcastle for Man City in Game Week 12 as well. So you've got that one out the way. So fixtures super, super nice for Liverpool and Man City from Game Week 13 onwards, to an extent where these players might actually be essential. Newcastle looks quite good here as well. So maybe you could sprinkle a bit of Newcastle in there, maybe Man United, maybe a bit of Bournemouth, some other teams that look quite good from around this time as well. But what is most important, I think, about the Game Week 13 wildcard idea is a lot of the players that you are going to have prior to Game Week 13 suddenly have bad fixtures. So right now, looking at a lot of our squads and maybe a lot of our transfer plans as well, you're going to have a lot of Chelsea, you're going to have a bit of Everton, you're going to have Spurs, you're going to have West Ham players in your team potentially there as well. All of these teams have pretty poor fixtures from Game Week 13 onwards, maybe with the exception of Chelsea in Game Week 14, but outside of that, really nothing special here. So it's a really nice opportunity to hop off a lot of the players you would have already had in your team and actually move towards a very different team containing a lot of Liverpool, a lot of Man City, particularly as by this point with Liverpool and Man City, we're going to be well aware of how they are setting up, who are the regular starters, and we can make some much more informed decisions by this slightly later point in the season. So I think the goal for a lot of people will be to wildcard in Game Week 13 if you don't have any injury issues, if you are reasonably happy with your team, or at least you feel you can fix it with transfers. Saving your wild card until Game Week 13 is probably the way to go, and also frees up your chip usage for slightly earlier weeks. Bench boosting Game Week 8, for example. If you wild card in 13, you can bench boost in Game Week 8, which is pretty nice. We will discuss this, and you can free hit in Game Week 4, 6, or 7. So using some of those other chips a little bit earlier, wild cutting in Game Week 13, because actually from Game Week 13, there's not as many bench boost opportunities that are clear to see right now. For free hit, there's not really too many weeks that stand out for a free hit as well from Game Week 13 onwards. So you can use the chips earlier and use your wildcard in Game Week 13, which works very, very nicely indeed. So let's talk about the free hit chip next. When should you be using this one? Well, you can use it tactically, or again, in the case of an emergency. If we're looking for using it tactically, then you're probably going to be looking to free hit when your team looks very bad for one game week only, but in all of the game weeks around that, it looks very, very good indeed. So for example, we mentioned before about the game week in which Liverpool faced Man City. If you did have a lot of Liverpool and Man City players, then you probably like the fixtures, you like the players for all of the fixtures around that specific week. However, you probably don't want these players for the game week in which they play each other. So that is going to be an example of when you are going to be free hitting to kind of avoid one specific game week with a lot of your players. And maybe that counts for multiple of your players all in one week. You can also use it if you know you will be missing key players during a specific game week. So for me, for example, I know I'm probably not going to have Erling Haaland for his home game against Burnley in Game Week 6. I'm not going to have any Man City players, in fact. So that could mean it might be a good idea for me to free hit them in Game Week 6, use that free hit chip there so I can cover a really nice fixture with players that I wouldn't ordinarily have if I were not to free hit in my team, particularly if you don't want to use your transfers on these players. And also the third reason, and this is a really, really kind of outside chance of a blank game week in game week 17 for Crystal Palace. It could also fall somewhere else, but I don't want to go into this one too much. There is a tiny chance of a blank game week for Crystal Palace, but it is technically possible. I think their game week 17 opponents is someone like Leeds or someone like that. It's a newly promoted team. I can't remember exactly who it is in that specific game week, so it's not really going to impact people very much. I think you could probably just bench the players for that week, but yeah, I did just want to point that out. There is a small chance of a blank game week later on in the season. We'll talk about it closer to the time if it does look like it's going to become more likely, but wouldn't really worry about it for now. And finally, we can use our free hit in a case of emergency. And again, this is going to be mostly about injuries and suspensions, but more so if they are short term. So for example, if a couple of your players are suspended for one game only, or they are injured, but it's a very minor injury, they're only going to be out of action for 1 week, then that could be a reason to free hit in that week, so you can cover those players and then get them back the following game week. So that is an emergency situation, but I would prefer to use the free hit tactically, and this is how you could do that. So we're going to talk about some free hit game weeks, but first of all, guys, if you wouldn't mind dropping a like on this video, I put a lot of work into these chip strategy videos to make sure they are the best ones anywhere on the internet. So hopefully you all will appreciate these FPL chip videos as we go through the season. We'll do a few more, I'm sure, before the chips change over and you get more chips to use, and then again loads in the second half of the season. So drop a like, do subscribe, and follow along, and we'll give you some more tips. So game week 4 free hit, what we're looking at here. So there are a few teams with pretty good fixtures in game week 4. Arsenal, Chelsea, Crystal Palace, Fulham, Liverpool in particular with that game against Burnley, Newcastle and Spurs. And the teams with bad fixtures are Brentford, Man United, Nottingham Forest and Wolves. So what I want you to do, guys, is basically, since game week 4 is right now, look at your team. Do you have a lot of Brentford, Man United, Forest and Wolves players? If so, and you are lacking players from Arsenal, Chelsea, Palace, Fulham, Liverpool, Newcastle and Spurs, then maybe that might be an indication that game week 4 is the time to use your free hit. So it's going to be all about, guys, how many players do you have in the good fixture category and how many players do you have in the bad fixture category? If you are severely weighted towards one category in your squad setup for game week 4 in this example, then that could be an indication, again, that you might want a free hit. If you have a lot of players with bad fixtures in game week 4, but not many who have good fixtures in game week 4. So that is the kind of immediate time to use the free hit. But again, not my favorite week. So game week 6 looks really nice for a free hit if you don't have any Man City players. In fact, if you don't have many or any players from Bournemouth, Chelsea, maybe you don't have Palmer in your team anymore, you might want him for his game against Brighton. If you don't have many or any Everton players, Forest players or Spurs players, then you are going to be lacking a little bit in game week 6. If you have a lot of players from Arsenal, Brighton, Palace, Liverpool, Newcastle and Wolves in game week 6, then again, that's a really good idea to maybe think about free hitting in game week 6, because again, these are players that you are probably going to want around game week 6, but not necessarily in game week 6. So you can make a quick change for one game week only. Now, as we go further through the game weeks, it's a little bit more difficult to kind of gather what kind of players that you are going to have in your team at this point, or by the game week 6. So you can kind of get an idea, what are your transfer plans? What is your team likely to look like in game week 6? And actually, if you do commit to a game week 6 wildcard, well, you can set, or not wildcard, game week 6 free hit, then you can say, okay, maybe I don't need to buy Haaland right now because I can free hit him in game week 6. Maybe I can keep some of my, slightly more of my Crystal Palace, Newcastle players, maybe even buy Crystal Palace and Newcastle players, because you will have their terrible game week in game week 6 covered already for you. So really, really nice way to go about this one. So that is definitely something that I would consider if that is kind of suits your strategy, suits your team, suits your plans as well. I don't mind a free hit in game week 7 either. This is one of my favorite ones alongside game week 6 free hit. So the good fixtures in game week 7 are Arsenal, Aston Villa, Brighton, Man City, Man United and Spurs. So actually quite a few teams have some pretty nice fixtures in here. And if you don't have many of these players, or you won't have many of these players by game week 7, this could be really nice to pick them up for one game week only. In terms of those bad fixtures, Brentford, Chelsea, Liverpool, Nottingham Forest and West Ham. And I know a lot of people do have some players from these teams, but in particular, game week 7 is the week in which Chelsea and Liverpool face off against each other. So if you did want to load up on Chelsea, load up on Liverpool, but you didn't want to have these players for their fixtures against each other, then no problem, cover it with a free hit in game week 7, and that works really well. So if you've got Joao Pedro, you know, Sanchez, Cucurella, Neto, Enzo. Maybe you're bringing Palmer back into your team. Maybe you already have Palmer, but you also want to add to Salah with, you know, maybe you've got Wirtz, maybe you've got Van Dijk, maybe you want to bring Isak in, and you're worried about Game Week 7. Well, free hit in Game Week 7 absolutely fixes that and absolutely covers it. And this is the final free hit opportunity that I can kind of foresee at this point. I'm not as convinced by this one, but we'll go over it anyway. So this is really to target Liverpool and Man City, who have a really nice fixtures in Game Week 15. So Liverpool play Leeds, Man City play Sunderland at home. We also have Newcastle against Burnley. You've got Man United against Wolves. You've got Brighton against West Ham. You've got Spurs against Brentford, which is not too bad there either. And I think you could build a really nice free hit team using players from those teams. If you have Aston Villa, Bournemouth, Crystal Palace and Brentford players, then, you know, a really nice opportunity to remove them from Game Week 15 or for Game Week 15 in isolation as well. I guess my issue is with this free hit is that actually you're going to kind of want to have Liverpool and Man City players in your main squad anyway, because actually the fixtures around Game Week 15 for Liverpool, Man City, even Man United and Newcastle are already really good. So is it going to fix your team, or is it going to cover up the cracks for one game week with players that you should have in your team anyway? So that's my concern. I think maybe if you were to go for a free hit in Game Week 15, it might actually make you, I don't know, maybe slightly more lazy, or, you know, not really taking action in your main FPL team because you feel like you can cover it for Game Week 15 only, when actually you need these players for more than just Game Week 15. So that's kind of my opinion on that one. But there's no doubt that if you are in a very bad spot by Game Week 15, you don't have all the players you want, maybe you can claw back a little bit of potential by free hitting in Game Week 15. But I have to say, guys, I think I do slightly prefer Game Week 6 and Game Week 7 for a free hit. Let's talk about bench boost next. If you want to use this tactically, you're going to be looking to play the bench boost when you have planned for your bench boost to be at its strongest. So you already kind of have an idea, you're already building towards a specific game week in which your bench is going to look really strong and you want to boost it, and we're going to give you some tips on how you can do that as well. Preferably you're going to bench boost before your wild card so you can downgrade your bench after if that is required. So I do prefer an earlier bench boost than your wild card, and then you can use your wild card to kind of fix your bench boost team, because sometimes a bench boost can be quite messy for the longer term and maybe slightly better in, you know, that individual game week. But longer term, if you have too much money on your bench, you're going to need to put it back into your starting 11. And the best way to do that is often by using a wild card, not necessarily immediately after, but, you know, shortly after. So that is a big thing that I would personally do. But you could also use your bench boost in an emergency, I suppose. I think we've all been there in certain times in our FPL careers when you suddenly realize your bench looks awesome in a particular game week and you just can't decide who to play. So if you do have those huge bench dilemmas, you think your bench looks great, you didn't plan for it or anything, but it's just suddenly, you know, happened out of nowhere, I guess, then yeah, why not hit the bench boost button and, you know, just cover that bench, get the points hopefully from your bench players as well as your starting 11 players. But again, hopefully, guys, we're going to use it tactically. So giving bench boost tips is a little bit more difficult. So hopefully this way is probably the best way to do it. Forgive me if it's not, but I tried to think of some ways to try and give bench boost tips, and I think this is probably the way to do it. So basically, guys, with a bench boost, it is very difficult to say what your bench looks like. I know what my bench looks like. I know what some of my friends' benches look like, but I don't know what everyone's bench looks like. So for that reason, it might be that I can make suggestions on where you might have a strong bench, but actually in reality your bench might look a lot better in other game weeks. And also, if we're going far into the future, if we're looking beyond game week 10, 11, 12, 13, it is again very difficult to predict what everyone's benches are going to look like. I don't have a clue what my bench is going to look like in game week 12, game week 13. It is too far in the future, so how can I possibly advise on that? So the way we're going to do things today, guys, is we're basically going to go through all of the, I guess, cheaper players that I see on a lot of people's benches. So, you know, we're looking at those 4 million, well, the 4 million goalkeeper like Dubravka. We're looking at those 4 million defenders, Estev, Goodmanson, Rodon, maybe Reinildo as well. So a lot of people have those players on their bench. And when do they have good fixtures? We need to look at the 4.5 million defenders. A lot of people have 4.5 million defenders on their bench. When do they have their best fixtures? And also those cheap midfielders. I think most people moving away from the cheap forward now. You know, you're not going to be bench boosting with a Mark Gu anymore. You're probably going to be upgrading that forward position and looking to play that forward in most game weeks at least. And therefore, the fifth slot, the final slot on your bench, I suppose, may be reserved for a midfielder right now, and maybe a cheap midfielder there as well, who is on your bench maybe most game weeks anyway. So let's look through some of these players. So we've spoken about the cheap goalkeepers and defenders. I think the most popular 4.5 million defenders are going to be Van de Ven, Richards, Gay, Wan-Bissaka, Juve, Konsa, Cash, Dorgu, De Kuyper, Senesi, Anderson, Tosin, and Agbadu. Hopefully I've covered your 4.5 million defender right there, but if I haven't, apologies. And those cheap midfielders that seem to be most popular right now are Reinders, Anderson, Dewsbury Hall, Paquetá, and King. Again, maybe you have someone slightly different. So we are going to basically go through some different game weeks where I think all of these players, or at least a good subset of these players, have really, really nice fixtures. And we're going to kind of look at, you know, are they a question mark? You know, maybe it's a good fixture, maybe it's bad, kind of unsure. Is it a tick where you actually, yes, this is a really nice player to bench boost, or maybe it's a cross in the case of Dorgu for game week 5, where, you know, you're probably not going to want to bench boost a Dorgu at home against Chelsea for game week 5, for example, if you do have him in your squad. So maybe game week 5 is not going to be the best for you. But if you do see a lot of your players with ticks, or you think you can move to some players with some ticks, maybe removing some of the question marks and X players, then, you know, maybe that is going to be a way to kind of turn what you have into a nice bench boost week. But certainly, primarily, we need Dubravka to have a good fixture. Most of us have Dubravka on our bench at this point. So if you do, you're going to need Dubravka to have a good fixture. And he kind of does. Dubravka, Esteve, Nottingham Forest at home. If you have a Leeds defender, they play against Wolves. If you have a Sunderland cheap defender like Reynildo, Aston Villa, not so good there really. But you know, it's okay. It's good enough that you could maybe bench boost it and kind of hope for the best here. Well, there's not going to be double game weeks on the bench boost, so we can't think about that in the first half of the season. Is, you know, a Dubravka against Nottingham Forest isn't just good enough, and therefore, is that a good reason to just go ahead and hit the bench boost button in game week 5? Maybe. A lot of these players are good for defensive contributions as well. So even if they don't have the best fixtures, then maybe they can pick up some DEFCON points. You know, players like Richards, Senesi, Anderson, even maybe Agbadu at Wolves, you can pretty much bench boost these players on any game week as long as they're not playing like a Liverpool or Man City, because even if they lose their clean sheets, you're going to have an opportunity to get some defensive contribution points for them as well. So that is a consideration. And there's other players like Paquetá, who is on penalties. Again, you can pretty much play these players any week. I think particularly with these cheap midfielders, you can pretty much play them any week. You can pretty much bench boost them any week. So maybe slightly more focus on the defenders and goalkeepers that you have. So game week 5. If you have these players with the tick, if you have Richards, Juve, Konsa, Senesi, Anderson, Agbadu, maybe some of them, if you have Anderson or King maybe in your squad, then actually game week 5 could be a really, really nice week to bench boost. But it is not the only option. In fact, there is another game week I really, really like, far more than game week 5, to an extent where I actually don't know why game week 5 is so hyped for a bench boost. I think there's actually a better option. And that's going to be game week 8. And the reason is because basically Burnley and Leeds, they play against each other. So both of these teams against a newly promoted team, because they're playing against each other, you can definitely say that Dubravka and Esteve, Goodmanson and Rodon have a good fixture in game week 8. So if you do have a Dubravka, I think you can have more confidence in him against Leeds in game week 8 than you would against Nottingham Forest in game week 5. So check there. Obviously, you know, if it's a 1-1 draw, that's not looking so good, but we can go on and on. That could happen in any game week. Let's be honest. We're looking at those odds. When is your best opportunity? And game week 8 is certainly one of those better opportunities for the likes of Burnley and Leeds players if you have them. In terms of those defenders, it is maybe a little bit reduced here, but Richards, Juve, Senesi, Tosin and Agbadu all have really nice fixtures in game week 8 if they're a 4.5 million defender on your bench. You can maybe even play the likes of Van de Ven, Konsa, De Kuyper, Anderson potentially there as well. Maybe worth replacing if you have the extra transfer or the extra money to make an upgrade. And in terms of those midfielders, Reinders has a slightly better fixture. That's at home against Everton. So actually not too bad really for Reinders there at home against Everton. That's a pretty nice fixture for him. I guess the concern with Reinders is he going to be rotation captain risk by that point. But if you don't really want to take the chance, you just want to bench boost him, that's totally good. Anderson against Chelsea, I think with the DEFCON, there's definitely potential there. If you've got Paqueta against Brentford at home, really nice. Even Dewsbury Hall, I think he is bench boostable maybe in game week 8. It's not perfect, and maybe it might be worth making a transfer, but you know, I think he is fine to bench boost in game week 8 as well. So I think actually for the, like, if you have Reinders, if you have Dewsbury Hall, if you have Paqueta, then it looks a little bit better in game week 8 than it did in game week 5. Or at least we can say that, can't we? So yeah, I think game week 8 right now is my favorite week to bench boost, but maybe that's because of the players I have in my team, and maybe it's more suited to me, but not necessarily more suited to you guys. Now, the other bench boost week I want to talk about, and maybe one I do, again, prefer to game week 5, is game week 9. So we have Dubravka against Wolves. Wolves have been pretty poor so far this season, so based on current information, that's going to be a pretty nice fixture. We've got Goodmanson and Rodon at home against West Ham. Again, not too bad there. For the defenders, there's lots of options here. So Van der Ven has a good fixture. Wan-Bissaka and Juve, Dorgus and Essie, Tosin, Agbadu all have really nice fixtures. And even like Richards, you can play him against Arsenal and, you know, hope for a clean sheet, but of course look for those defensive contributions. You can play Anderson against Newcastle potentially there as well. And the midfielders all have really nice fixtures as well. You're going to have some rotation with risk with Reinders in game week 9, but Anderson against Bournemouth, Dewsbury Hall against Spurs, Paqueta against Leeds, these are all really, really nice bench boostable players. So I really like game week 9 for a bench boost as well. I think it works, and it's going to work for a lot of people, and maybe you are one of those people. Again, of course, it is difficult to predict what our benches might look like in game week 9, but if we just get a rough idea right now on what our bench might potentially look like, maybe you have a couple of these players already, maybe you can switch a couple of others. Game week 9 looks like a really nice bench boost, and then of course you can wildcard shortly after that to remove any, I guess, upgraded players that you made transfers for in game week 9 for that bench boost. Okay, triple captain. This bit is really simple. Finally, we've got a simple part of the video, and basically what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at Salah, Haaland, and maybe Palmer. So these three premium players that know how to score FPL points. When do they have their best fixtures during the first half of the season? Now, for Salah, we've got Burnley in game week 4. Maybe Salah lacking a bit of form in game week 4. But if you are confident and you want to go for Salah in game week 4 for a triple captain, I think that is A-okay. We've got Sunderland at home in game week 14, which is pretty nice. And Leeds in game week 15, maybe. I think I prefer Sunderland in game week 14. But just as a warning, guys, even though Salah does have, I think, Leeds at home in game week 19. I think he plays Wolves at home, maybe in game week 18 as well. He is going to be unavailable for those fixtures. He is going to be at AFCON from game week 16, game week 17 potentially there. So he is going to be unavailable to triple captain during the first half of the season from game week 16, 17 onwards. So if you are planning to triple captain using Salah, then you're probably going to have to do it in one of game week 4, 14 or 15. Of course, you know, if you fancy captaining Isak, then you could maybe triple captain him in game week 18 or 19. I think that is okay too. But if you are dead set on Salah triple captain in the first half of the season, it's game week 4, 14 or 15. Those are literally your only 3 options. But I do actually quite like the look of Haaland for some of these triple captain weeks. Now, if you're not free hitting in game week 6, Burnley at home could be a really nice week to play that triple captain on for you guys, for Haaland. I think he could do really well there. He's already showing form. Burnley are already showing some weaknesses, and Haaland could do super well in this fixture. I would definitely consider it if you're not free hitting there. We've got Leeds at home in game week 13, Sunderland at home in game week 15, and you also have Sunderland away in game week 19. I guess that's more of a last resort triple captain. If you forgot to use your triple captain all the way until game week 19, I guess you have that week to kind of fall back on. But when you've got Sunderland at home in game week 15, it's probably a better idea to just use it there if you are going for the Haaland triple captain. And we'll make a couple of suggestions for Palmer. We're looking at newly promoted teams. Again, Sunderland in game week 9, Burnley in game week 12. But again, I don't know who the worst defenses are going to be throughout this whole season. It's only been 3 game weeks. It could be, you know, you never know. It could be Brentford. I know Everton haven't started great defensively, but Wolves have also been a team that have been pretty poor. So maybe a game week 11 triple captain on Palmer could work. But I think definitely what is going to happen is another 1 or 2 teams are going to emerge as targetable teams that might even end up being worse than the newly promoted teams. So we need to keep an eye on that. We need to a few more game weeks weeks of information, find out who the worst defenses are, and therefore when we could have even more opportunities to use our triple captain. It really is wide open on the triple captain this season for the first half of the season at least. So definitely something to think about. One more note, this is not necessarily related to triple captain, but as you can see for Palmer, his fixtures from game week 9 to game week 12, I think maybe even from game week 8, are actually incredible. So if you have sold Palmer recently, make sure you get him in from game week 8, game week 9 onwards for these really, really nice fixtures, because you're not going to want to miss out on Palmer in these fixtures. Even if you don't triple captain him, you're going to at least want him for those. So yeah, just a little extra bit of non-chip strategy information for you guys there. So let's round up with a summary. And of course, guys, as I mentioned before, you know, just because a chip strategy or a particular game week is good for a chip for one person, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the best for everyone. But as per my suggestions for a wild card, game week 7, game week 8, and game week 13 look like the best weeks. For a free hit, game week 4, 6, 7, or 15 look like the best. For a bench boost, game week 5, 8, and 9 look like the best. And for a triple captain, game week 6, 13, 14, or 15 look the best right now. But I think the triple captain one is the one that is the most open to interpretation. For my personal plan, and this is subject to change, I haven't fully committed yet, but I have a good idea. I do plan to wildcard in game week 13. I think I can survive that long, or at least I hope, but you never know with injuries. For my free hit, I'm planning on playing it in game week 6, but I am open to game week 7 as well. For bench boost, I think I'm going to go for game week 8, but again, I am open to game week 9 for a bench boost. And as for my triple captain, right now, I'm kind of looking at game week 14 and 15, kind of looking at Haaland mostly, but yeah, there's so much that can change with a triple captain, so I don't really want to lock that one in at all. But this is just a rough plan that I am working with right now, and I'm making my transfer decisions based on this specific plan. If we have to deviate later, fair enough, but I like to have a plan in mind. I like to kind of identify when I think I'm going to use my chips, and therefore I can make transfers that kind of reflect that. I can say I don't need to buy Haaland because I'm going to free hit in game week 6. I don't need to worry too much about my, I don't know, my Everton, Spurs, Aston Villa players because I'm going to wildcard in game week 13 when they have their bad fixtures there. I don't need to pick up a Newcastle player because I can pick one up in game week 13 when I wildcard. I need to focus and make sure my bench looks really good for game week 8. I can plan ahead with that. I can start picking up players now who I know have a good fixture in game week 8, so I can bench boost them. So again, using all these ideas from this video, getting an idea of when my chips are going to be played, therefore I can make informed transfers based on that plan, I guess. And I would definitely recommend you guys do a similar thing. Go through this video. Which game weeks resonated with you the most? What sounds really nice as a game week to bench boost or wildcard or free hit? Identify the weeks that you want to use your chips, and then you can make informed transfers based on that chip strategy. And that's probably the biggest piece of advice that I have for you guys today. But as I did say, if you wouldn't mind dropping a like on this video, it would be massively appreciated. Loads of work goes into the planning of this. I don't just pull information or copy what other people are doing. I always make sure I do my own research, find my own information, and try and kind of figure out things that maybe other people are not talking about as much, and try and provide the best kind of information for you guys so you can make your own decisions. And I'm not here to tell you guys what to do, but make sure you guys have the best tools to, you know, be confident in your decisions. I think that's the most important thing here, guys. And yeah, of course, do make sure you subscribe if you haven't done already. You want to follow along for regular FPL tips. A like would be appreciated, and we'll be back for yet more videos ahead of the game week 4 deadlines. Cheers, guys, and I'll see you later, mates. Bye-bye.